Morning. It's good to see everybody up early here. It's good to be back in the city of Milwaukee. Actually, the mayor and I were just talking about 2 days in a row. Obviously, we had a great announcement at Direct Supply yesterday with some 800 good-paying jobs, really good-paying jobs that were announced as part of a long-term plan with the expansion of Direct Supply right here in the city of Milwaukee. And really today, what we're focused on, and a number of us will be speaking, I want to acknowledge all the different leaders that we have here. Mayor Barrett, County Executive Abele, we've got Common Council President Hamilton, Senator Taylor, we've got members of our cabinet. Here you're going to hear in a moment from Secretary Ray Allen, the Secretary of the Department of Workforce Development, also joined by the Secretaries of the Department of Health Services, Children and Families, the head of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and the head of the Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Authority. I want to thank Earl Buford and all the others at Employ Milwaukee, not only for hosting us here today, but for partnering with us on this and many other projects we appreciate, and many of the other lawmakers and appointed officials here from the city, county, and state level. What we're really focused on today is just the first of a number of steps going forward, and they really come out of discussions over the last week and a half about how to bring many of the things we've been working on with the city and the county, many ideas that others have had for quite some time, and putting renewed focus on those issues. Last week in particular, not only meeting with city and local officials, city and county I should say, but also in particular some of the stops that we made not too far from here with about 40 or 50 different ministers over at Park Lawn that Bishop Harvey put together, being over at the Joseph Project, meeting with others throughout the area, and just looking at, in particular at that, the meeting with ministers, one of the questions came was how can we put a renewed focus on creating jobs and bringing industry to the city of Milwaukee. And there have been a number of things, a number of ideas that have been put on the table. Again, some that'll take some more time. I was last Wednesday talking at length with Senator Taylor at the State Office Building about some ideas for the future, and others have brought up some ideas about hubs and things like that. We'll be announcing more details on that in the future. But really today, what we're announcing is a renewed $4.5 million, or a new $4.5 million commitment to helping build the workforce here in the city of Milwaukee and help rebuild neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee. And I'm going to ask Secretary Ray Allen in a moment to share a little bit more in detail for just a few moments, and then ask the mayor and the county executive to talk as well, because this is really has to be done and will be done in a partnership. But part of our focus here is when I was sitting down talking and thanking, actually began by thanking a number of the ministers who, as the mayor and I talked about, really helped, I think, in response 2 weekends ago, we're probably at the forefront of helping ease tensions and really bring some calm and stability, not just back to Sherman Park, but to the city as a whole. And as we got talking beyond just thanking them about what can be done, when they ask about how can we bring more industry to Milwaukee, I said, well, there's all sorts of things. At that point, I wasn't able yet to announce the direct supply and the state's involvement along with the city's incredible actions to help them expand and grow some 800 jobs, in this case really good paying, over $32 an hour jobs that they're providing there, and some of the other work that's being done at businesses and others throughout the city. But I said the number one issue, if we want to create more jobs, higher incomes, better opportunities, is workforce. It's workforce. Like the old movie, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. And so one of the things that was clear, and I hear it not just in Milwaukee, I hear it all around the state. Obviously I was in Milwaukee yesterday, but I was other parts of the state of Wisconsin, and I constantly hear, we've done now 59 listening sessions, including 2 here in the city of Milwaukee throughout this year, but whether it's in Milwaukee or it's a small town clear on the other side of the state, the number one thing we hear from employers is that they need more people to fill positions. That having a qualified workforce is one of the biggest challenges towards growing anywhere in the state of Wisconsin. And that was statewide, granted in certain areas, in certain neighborhoods, it's obviously much higher, but statewide for the last several months, we have an unemployment rate of 4.2%. That's the lowest the state has been since March of 2001. So we're at a 15-year low. We've got the highest level of people employed, but we've still got pockets in the state, particularly here in Milwaukee and other areas that have unacceptably high levels of unemployment. And what that suggests is we need to do more to help identify the workforce, either to identify skills that people already have and plug them into jobs that are available, or help people if they're lacking the skills needed for the jobs that are open, help them get the training and the education and experience they need to fill those positions. And so part of what we're focusing on here is doing just that. Again, Raylan's going to fill us in a little bit more about taking not only what we're doing in conjunction with great organizations like Employ Milwaukee, but taking it out of buildings and structures and putting it out mobilely, out to neighborhoods, not just Sherman Park, but to other neighborhoods across the city of Milwaukee, to help individuals, residents of this city, identify their job skills, identify what kind of employment options are available, and then help break down some of the barriers. So it's not just the Department of Workforce Development, but a number of our other state agencies who will be involved with this mobile response to help individuals not only identify the skills they need to fill those positions, but to help them remove the barriers that all too often stand in the way of finding employment, whether it be transportation, whether it be child care, whether it be dealing with other parts of the system, to help remove those barriers, and something that the state won't be doing alone. Again, we'll be working with partners like Employ Milwaukee and others to do just that. The other part, and something we've done in the past, but the mayor and I in particular talked about this, was it's not just about building a workforce, it's helping to rebuild neighborhoods, to send a tangible message that people care about neighborhoods all across this city and all across this state. One of the things we've done in 2 previous phases in conjunction with the Department of Financial Institutions and providing some resources to the city to help with foreclosed, blighted, and otherwise abandoned properties is another $2 million. And a thank you to Brad Schimmel, the Attorney General, for freeing that up from part of the settlement the state's got for consumer protection. We'll be putting another $2 million into a program the mayor's going to talk about, where from Sherman Park all the way over here to the 30th Street Industrial Corridor, there's about, well, over 500 properties in that category, and this will help empower both the training that's needed to help individuals, ideally from these neighborhoods, get the training needed to then assist the city in the program. We'll be providing assistance through that $2 million and through other sources to then help demolish, revitalize, and renovate those properties, just as the city has done previously. And we want to be a good partner in that regard. And so that's really what we're talking about today, is putting a focus on building the workforce and rebuilding neighborhoods all across the city of Milwaukee. There are other good ideas out there that folks, lawmakers, local officials, Common Council President and I and others met last week about some public safety issues. Those are all things that continue to be on our radar and things we'll be working on in the coming weeks and months ahead. We want to have a renewed positive partnership with not only the leadership, but with the people here in Milwaukee and in Milwaukee County. And we appreciate all the leaders that have come with us today. With that, I'm going to turn over to Ray Allen to talk for a few minutes about some of the details of this rapid response and how we're going to take it out to neighborhoods all across the city of Milwaukee. Secretary Allen.
Thank you. I want to first just thank the other state departments that are here today for their wonderful assistance in us developing and continuing to support our efforts to build a workforce in the state of Wisconsin. We're very proud today to build upon the work that we're currently doing down here. And the core piece of that work, as the governor has mentioned, will be our ability to be proactive with our services. We, in conjunction with Employ Milwaukee and other organizations down in the Milwaukee area, will be deploying our services to job seekers in their neighborhoods. We will be using community centers, using nonprofit centers, using faith-based facilities, so that we are bringing the services to exactly where the job seekers are. We will be announcing some further details on that as of next week, but our conversations here have been extraordinary. In this community, the city and Employ Milwaukee has been a tremendous partner, been very receptive to this concept of ideas. So in the mobile centers, we will perform all the duties that we perform currently in our job service offices. We will do assessment. We will help with resume building. We will allow people to do job search. We assess them and then provide them or refer them to other services that will support their needs. Our goal is to prepare people for the workforce, and we will do that throughout these centers. The centers will be throughout the city. This is in conjunction with our current job service offices that will remain at full staff and continue to provide the current services that we do. Our outreach efforts will have variable hours so that we will have hours that reflect the need of the community, not hours that are structured. In addition, we will again support the city with customized training grants, utilizing the governor's Fast Forward program to make those grants available to the city, to allow them again to apply and get additional funds to prepare this city's workforce. In addition, we'll also be working with the city if they choose to pursue, and as they pursue, additional funding from the federal government. We will be supportive in our efforts and our support in their granting and requesting grant processes. This outreach and partnership is critical to our success. It's our goal to provide opportunity, to provide access to the services that we have, to train up and assist every Milwaukee resident who wants a job to have a job. And we will not let our governmental institutions be a barrier. We will be proactive and take our institution to the communities. So with that, I'll leave it back to the governor. Thank you.
Thanks, Secretary Allen. And as he alluded to, this is really about taking it to the streets, about getting the message out about the need for workforce, trying to break down those barriers. It'll be building off of things. You know, one of the listening sessions, and Ralph Holman was at one of our listening sessions, we talked about transitional jobs. Eloise Anderson is here with the Department of Children and Families. We're looking as part of this to take that a step further, to do more, not just now in today's announcement, but to do more going forward, because we know with things like transitional jobs, with mobile units out helping people identify their job skills and helping break down those barriers, our ultimate goal is to help people transition from government dependence to true independence by empowering people to get the skills needed, not just to be employed, but then in turn to control their own lives and set their own destinies going forward. So we're going to do more of that, not only with the agencies here, but even in some unique and unusual ways. Just a few weeks ago at the State Fair, we highlighted Vincent High School as one of our newly designated areas through the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection as an agricultural center of excellence, which was an interesting connection, having students at the fair who were from largely rural areas connecting with the leadership at Vincent High School, but thinking about urban agriculture and some of the ideas that we can build off here. We're going to look at every different way to make a connection to the opportunities that we have here in the city of Milwaukee, which is not only our state's largest city by population, but one of our largest economic centers, and we certainly want that to grow. And with that, we ask our partner, the leader of the city of Milwaukee, Mayor Tom Barrett, to join us as well.
Thank you very much, Governor, and we really appreciate the work that you have done personally, as well as members of your cabinet and other state departments, on an issue that's very, very important, I think, to all of us. Recently, I saw an analysis that stated that 72% of southeastern Wisconsin's low-income population is centered in the city of Milwaukee, the core of the metropolitan area. 72% of our region's poor is in the heart of the city. That's the second highest concentration nationally of low-income people. So for whatever reason, whether it was intentional, whether it was unintentional, whether it was government, whether it was driven by the private sector, our society has created a situation where the vast majority of low-income people are located and live very close to where we are right now. Now the question comes, is that a problem and a challenge for the city? Is that a problem and challenge for the region? Is that a problem and challenge for the state? And in my conversations with various people, there's different answers. Some say, oh, that's your problem. That's the city's problem. And my response to that has been, no, this is our problem. This is a city problem and challenge. It's a southeastern problem and challenge. And it's a statewide problem and challenge. Because we as a society have to decide what is going to happen to low-income people. And whether they're low income because of mistakes they've made, because of racism, because of poverty, because of housing, because of education, that's where we are. That's where we are. And that's what we have to deal with in real time here. The willingness of the state and the federal government to recognize the seriousness of this problem is something that I appreciate greatly. Because this is something that the city simply does not have the resources to handle by itself. Again, if you look at the people who live in the city, who live in poverty, we just simply don't have the resources to do it. So then the question is, what happens next? As we looked at the aftermath of what happened several weeks ago, one of the things I said is there are lots and lots and lots of things that we have to do. And not only have we had the conversations with the governor and his staff, just yesterday I was speaking to Secretary of Labor Perez. I'll be at the federal level. I'll be speaking to the Secretary of HUD, Secretary Castro, later today to see how we can access federal resources as well. And Congresswoman Moore, Senator Baldwin, Senator Johnson have all reached out as well. So we appreciate that. But I think our challenge right now is several. One is, and this started right after the weekend, as someone who grew up here during the unrest of the 1960s, I saw the disinvestment that occurred in this city after what happened in the 1960s. And it was really decade-long problem. I am resolved not to allow that disinvestment to occur again. And I've reached out to virtually nearly every business owner who was affected by this and told them, we want you to reinvest. We cannot have the message be resources are leaving this area, because that's exactly the wrong answer. We need more resources in this area, not fewer resources. And the response we've got thus far has been very encouraging, and we're hopeful that most, if not all, of the businesses will relocate to send the message that, yep, we were knocked down, but we're getting up. And that's an important message that we have to send. But there's another message, and it's a message to the residents, and the governor referred to this. There are visual signs of the poverty in the city, and most of them, as you drive down many of the streets, are the houses themselves. And when we ran the numbers following what happened, as the governor pointed out, there are over 500 vacant buildings in the 10 census tracts that comprise the Sherman Park area and the surrounding areas of the 30th Street and Deckler Quarter. The city probably owns 200, 220 of those. The rest are in private hands. Some are residential, some are commercial. But even those in private hands, when push comes to shove, if they're vacant now, that means probably nobody's coming back. And they continue to atrophy and to deteriorate. And so what we're trying to do here, and this is again where this partnership will be helpful, I want to put people from this neighborhood to work fixing those homes or tearing them down. Because we know that there are thousands of people in this neighborhood who need work. And so what we're doing, working with Earl Buford and Employ Milwaukee, we know that we have to have a system that works, and we have to build the capacity to do this, and we have to do it fast, where people from this neighborhood can come to sites that Earl sets up working with the state, get them there. We have to create the capacity to get people to work right now. That's a short-term solution, and that's something that we need to do. So it's real and it's visible, and this is taking a significant step in allowing us to do that. Again, we're going to be relying on our friends at the federal government to help us do that more. We can scale it up the more resources we have, but we want to and we need to and we must make sure that there is a real and visible response to the poverty that we see in this community, and it has to be meaningful. Beyond that, there's the work that we're doing at areas like the Century City and this neighborhood surrounding that. We have to retain the businesses that are there, and we need the help of the private sector to locate more jobs there. But I'm here today to say thank you to the governor, to his cabinet. I want to thank Alderman Hamilton, the president of the Common Council, has been engaged from day one in working with us. We've worked well with the county executive. This is when we're being tested as well. Government is being tested as well, because the problems we have are real, and we must respond in a meaningful and real fashion for the people that we represent. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor Barrett, and I think you hit it right on the head, that this is not only a meaningful but a visible leadership that we're trying to show collectively amongst the city, the county, the state, and our partners here in the city of Milwaukee, to know that this is the first visible step we're showing of many more, and thinking about tying it all together. Again, it goes back to workforce, the individuals that will be trained to help assist in the program the mayor just talked about, will people that not only will help there, but because there's openings in construction and need for work in that area, it will extend beyond that. But again, it's about showing people we have that workforce, certainly as we did yesterday with Direct Supply, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, as well as the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, stands ready to help. And I certainly send an invitation out to any employer, not just here, but any employer in the state, in this region, or elsewhere, looking at expanding or growing the business, to say we can help you grow in the city of Milwaukee. We can help you find a space here in the city of Milwaukee, and we can help you, most importantly, find the workforce to meet that need. And this is a visible way of showing our commitment in doing that. Obviously, another great partner, not only from an economic development and workforce standpoint, but from a social service standpoint. We do a lot of work together already, is Milwaukee County, and appreciate Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele being here as well.
Well, good morning. Whatever the occasion, happy or sad, I'm always glad when there's this many people talking about an issue that we should probably talk about a lot more. For 5 years since I've been in office, I've been saying, hold me accountable, hold all of us accountable, not just for what we say, but for what we do. We, for 5 years, have increased at the county our investment in the parks, and specifically in city parks. Why does that matter? Alderman Hamilton did me the honor of introducing me and when I was sworn in just last April, but we didn't do that at the courthouse. We did that at Moody Park. Moody Park is in the middle of 53206, and everybody here knows the statistics around 53206. One of the statistics you don't hear is that in the last 3 years, with the crime and murder rate going up and spiking in 53206, in the heart of it, an exception about 2 blocks in every direction around Moody Park, where it went down.
Say it.
And here's the thing.
That's what works.
We put in real new money, and we worked with the community. We didn't come in from the outside and tell people, here's what you need. We asked the neighbors, we asked the business community, we asked the faith community. And as you all know, when you go through that exercise, not everybody agrees, but when you go through that exercise, what you end up with is a lot more reflective of the community that's there, and there's a lot more ownership. That's a practice we're going to continue, and it's great to see, and I too, I echo the mayor, I'm grateful for the state, for the governor, for in particular Secretary Anderson, Wayman, and the new Human Services Director, and congratulations, I believe this is day 5, Linda Seemeyer. I, of course, am thrilled to have somebody in that position who has a lot of experience with counties and understands what our role is and how we can help. In the last 5 years, the single biggest increase we've made in all of our resources while we are the county has been within the city of Milwaukee, and that's because that's where the need is, and we're going to keep doing it. I look forward to working with everybody here today, but if there's one thing I'd say as a favor to me, hold us all accountable. Hold us all accountable for following up and making real actions. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge, I see a friend in the room, Vincent Wiles, who runs the Boys and Girls Club in Milwaukee. The Boys and Girls Club is represented, as you all know, in Sherman Park by the Mary Ryan Club. That club has been there for a long time, has about 200 members. That's 200 of 43,000 members in the greater Milwaukee area. And for every one of those members, what the Boys and Girls Club has been doing for years and years and years is providing hope and opportunity and leadership and learning for a lot of kids who wouldn't otherwise have it. They have been a great partner, and I look forward to working with them as well. But as I said, thank you, Governor. Thank you to the representatives from the state departments here, and I look forward to working with us. And thanks to you all for covering this really important issue, and I encourage you, keep covering.
With that, from the media here, we'll take questions for me or any of the participants.
Reallocation of state resources, right? Not new, not additional.
We don't have to appropriate new money, so it's new money that's coming into Milwaukee, but it's money that we have within existing state accounts, either the $2 million that's already in a settlement but hasn't been designated for any purpose, so it's not coming from anything, it's just sitting in the pot that Attorney General Brad Schimmel had, and we talked to him about it. He thought it was an appropriate use, particularly as it ties in, Mayor's talked about this before, in terms of the housing crisis and mortgages and how we've done this in the past, the previous two phases where the state helped. So that $2 million comes out of that pot. The others either come from workforce development or the Department of Children and Families that are coming in specifically for this focus in Milwaukee.
You mentioned town council's safety plan that you discussed earlier this week, something else to benefit the city. There were proposals in that included a sales tax for law enforcement, fee increases from the state. Are you open at all to any increase in revenue to support initiatives in the city of Milwaukee?
Well, we looked at the whole package. We actually had set that meeting up. Common Council President Hamilton had asked for a meeting long before, 2 weekends ago, and so this was just timely that we had the meeting then. But on public safety, and I know there's a whole series of other things on workforce development, economic development, social services, community engagement, that we're looking forward to work with the Common Council President on, the mayor and others in the city on, and we'll work with them on all that. As you can imagine, a number of things there, not just on the potential revenue streams, but on a whole assortment of changes. Many require statutory or at least actions by the state legislature, and so, as many here know, the legislature's not in until January. The things we're announcing today are things we can do without requiring any vote or action of the state legislature. We can take in effect immediately. That's why I say this is a down payment. There are other things, not just in public safety, but I would imagine in other areas that we can add in the future. And in some ways, take things that we're doing and do a better job of focusing it on the same priorities. I mean, for example, yeah, line's the right way, Senator Taylor, you're right about that. I mean, for example, we, County Executive just mentioned Vincent and Boys and Girls Club. We put a significant investment to After 3 because they have incredible results for improving reading scores for children, young people who go to the After 3 programs at the Boys and Girls Club. We can do more for that. We've worked with the city and the Boys and Girls Club and other organizations on the Mayor's Summer Youth Initiative. We can do more to align that. We just invested more the last couple of years into Milwaukee area technical colleges, not only for individuals to go in, but we actually have, a lot of people don't know this, we put funding into MATC to help offenders who are about to leave the criminal justice system to be trained as CNC operators, because we know there's a great need and demand for those positions. We'd like to expand that even further and do some of what the House of Corrections does with welding and other things in that regard. These are all things, some of which we can align on our own, some of which require legislative action. Senator Taylor, Representative-elect Fields, and others have suggested some ideas with urban agriculture and things that we can create clusters and put focuses on there. Those are all things we're open to talking about in the coming months as part of aligning a focus. But the one thing I just want to stress that was so clear in our meeting with the faith community, with the church leaders a week and a half ago, was that workforce is the number one thing I hear. People say if you have a workforce, they will come. It's part of the reason why direct supply, it wasn't just the city's actions and the state's actions that got them to 800 new jobs in the 280,000 square foot facility they're building, investing in. It's the fact that they have a stream of workers that they need, whether it's from the technical college or places like the Milwaukee School of Engineering and others, that allows them to be able to grow in a place like the city of Milwaukee. We need to show any and every employer that we can do the same for them with the population base that it's here, and either identify the skills that they already have or help them get the training and education they need to fill it. So for us, as long as it aligns with that vision of building workforce and helping rebuild communities, we're interested in doing it.
Envision sending into the community?
Well, there'll be multiple. I think, Ray, part of what you were talking about is they're trying to determine the exact number. They'll probably have a more specific announcement within this next week. The idea is to get them out, I'll be rapid, is to get them out quite quickly. So the money's there, working with Employ Milwaukee and others, is trying to figure out how many will be mobile and how many will be at sites like this.
Yeah, we have about 12, 15, we have about 12, 15 mobile units right now that we utilize that we will deploy immediately. We will also deploy equivalent staffing. We will use locations that already have internet access there, so we will just expand that and enhance that, work with the existing staff at those locations, plus the additional staff that we will reallocate to those locations.
And you've used these units before?
We do. We use mobile units for the Department of Corrections because there are challenges to access the population. Our goal has been always to work with people prior to reentry. So in order to get to them earlier, before they're released, we use the mobile units. Then that eliminates the concerns that the Department of Corrections has with them having internet access. Our units are structured so that they can only access our job service materials in site.
And just to be clear on that, because Ray and I had talked about that, that's been used that way before. This purpose, it's wide open to anybody. It's just that's what it's been used for. When we talked about it, and Ray mentioned that we had these, we said, yeah, let's do it. What we heard from local leaders, elected and otherwise, was, as the mayor said, give us something visible, give us something tangible that we can see that isn't just for show, that actually gets things done, but that people can see something different's happening. There's a focus, there's a connection, there's a visible investment in the city of Milwaukee, not just in terms of a check, holding a check up at a ceremony, but rather physically that people can see with these units across the city. And they won't just be Sherman Park, they'll be in other neighborhoods because there's needs all across the city.
Governor, this announcement comes during the same week that the Kauffman Foundation ranks Wisconsin last in the country for startup activity. Is any of this investment specifically earmarked to encourage Central City entrepreneurship?
Well, for us, we'll take any and all businesses that we can get, and as you can imagine, I have issues with that survey in the sense that if you look at 10 years out, or you look at the 7 and 10 year cycle, we rank in the top 10 in the nation in both of those in terms of startups that are still in business 6 years after, and startups that are still in business 10 years after. So states around the country can have all the startups in the world, but if they're gone in a year or two, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It's ones that are sustainable, that actually employ people over an extended period of time that are important. That's where we rank higher in that regard. But from this standpoint, first and foremost, it's about employment. The next wave of things we'll be talking about are additional investments we can make, whether it's helping people start up businesses, whether it's helping existing businesses or attracting others to the region. For us, the number one thing I keep going back to, though, is if you have a workforce, businesses will come whether they're newly started or they're established or they're coming from somewhere else.
What's the fair benchmark for either the DWD's effort or the abandoned properties effort to knock down or rehab? What are fair benchmarks and over what period of time?
Well, in terms of this initiative, the next several months, obviously, as we get into colder temperatures, mobile units are less effective as having more permanent structures, and so we'll want to have the mobile presence initially and then continue with not only our state job centers, but with our partners with Employ Milwaukee and others to have an established base. What we hope is to continue to have an increase, not just in the number of sites available, but the number of people who are, not only the number of people we serve, but how many people we're actually able to help find a position, find a job. And that's really what it boils down to, is we can meet with people, but if they're not employed, it's really about how many people go through this process and find gainful employment, whether it's in their immediate neighborhood, a surrounding neighborhood, somewhere within the region. If someone can find employment, that's incredibly important. The next phase, then, along with that, will be ways that we can work, again, at the state, but also at the city and regional level to help identify more employers that can come in the area. But one of the key elements is helping identify that workforce. And I would think, Mayor, you may want to touch on this as well, but the city's got a specific plan as to where these funds will be used and the numbers of both people that can be employed and the number of properties that can be effective to that funding.
And we will get you.
How soon the property work can start?
Well, we have a raise list right now, and as soon as the funds are here, we will start employing somebody for raise. And what this is going to also entail, though, is building the capacity and making sure that we have the capacity. That's why the rapid response, the mobile sites, the sites that Earl's going to put up are very, very important. We know that there are people who want jobs. We know that. That's not going to be the issue. We want to make sure that we've got the capacity so that when we bring them in, that we can do the work that needs to be done. So last time we worked with the state, we were able to demolish 200 homes. Again, we have 500 homes that are vacant. A little over 200 are within the city's inventory. Our first choice is not to demolish the homes. If we can fix the homes, that's our first choice, because you can imagine, I want families in these homes, I want them paying property taxes, I want to make sure that they're not draining resources from the city or pushing down property values of adjacent properties. But to let you know how real this is, one of the things that happened in the last several weeks was there were several homes, vacant homes, that were set afire, and not surprisingly, the neighbors are angry because there's been a raise order on the home and the funds aren't there. This is going to allow us to protect the neighbors as well for homes that do need to be raised. So we will get you the information as soon as we compile it. Again, this is very much a work in progress, that we understand that this needs to be a rapid response from us as well as on the ground.
The other benefit with that is capacity. And County Executive Abele knows this, but years ago when I was the county executive with the noise abatement program, for example, at the airport, one of the things we did was put a renewed focus to not just meet but to exceed our goals for contractors that did noise abatement adjustments on properties around the airport that were either women-owned or minority-owned, and we had about 50%, which was far above the original target. Well, that was great, but the better part of that was we built capacity so that then those contractors were able to go out and not just do the work that was required for the noise abatement. They actually went out and expanded their operations and started doing other work with those properties, because once they did the door or the window, somebody said, hey, you do good work. Would you take a look at my basement? Would you look at this remodeling project I have? And that's part of it too. It's not just having a crew that's already there. It's about training the individuals that'll help assist in the city's program. Ideally, people from the neighborhoods affected. Then we'll have the capacity to go out and not just work on these projects, but work on other remodeling and building projects.
Will you be able to speak at all to what you're going to do for Milwaukee in the next budget?
Well, considering that's coming out in February, it's a lot of time between now and then. I mean, a lot will depend on obviously where revenues are in later in the year and on this, but you know, we've made a commitment overall to put a significant increase in public education in the state. Obviously, a fair amount of that will go into the Milwaukee public school system, but not just in general funds. I mean, one of the things Rayon and I have talked about before, and I sat down with the board leadership and with Superintendent Driver on, is youth apprenticeships. We've doubled youth apprenticeships in the state over the past 4 years, and yet unfortunately in Milwaukee there's what, 40? 42. And so one of the things we said is, hey, we're willing to step up, but we need MPS to step up as well, because we know statistically that young people who go through youth apprenticeships have a dramatically higher starting income in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. And so we're willing to partner with MPS, not just on overall school aids, but on programs like that. I mean, heck, I'd love to have every kid at Bradley Tech be involved in a youth apprenticeship, because we know we can almost guarantee we can find them not just a job, but a career that will pay well and support themselves and their family. And so it's not just about how much, but it's about the programs we're talking about. It's the things that President Hamilton brought to our attention last week. It's things the mayor and I have talked about in terms of shared revenue and others. All those things we'll be looking at. But obviously today, the reason I brought this up is these are things that don't require action of the legislature. We could do right away to show a meaningful and tangible way that we're investing in building the workforce and helping to rebuild neighborhoods here in the city of Milwaukee.
That was a great question there.
Great. Thanks everybody. Appreciate it.